another vote that has been taken in the House and is headed to the Senate most likely is to codify and enshrine the right to gay marriage. That was another thing that Justice Thomas floated of like, hey, I think Obergefell was wrongly decided if we follow this logic as well. So let's go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen. This is called the Respect for Marriage Act. The House on Tuesday passed this act, would protect marriage equality by repealing the Defense of Marriage Act and providing federal protections for same-sex and interracial couples. This is a position that is supported now by 71% or so of the public. It's supported by a majority of the Republican voting base. But again, you have most of the Republican caucus voting against it. The bill passed 267 to 157, 47 Republicans, so more, I guess, support gay marriage than contraception, joining every Democrat voting in favor of the bill. And again, going to the Senate, so far, right now, publicly, we don't have 10 Republicans who have said that they would vote in favor of gay marriage. And you have a couple of other measures that do directly involve abortion that Democrats are pushing as well. They think both of those would surely fail in the Senate. One would enshrine the right to an abortion into federal law. The other would ban states from interfering with a woman's right to travel for the procedure. So that, again, is, that's a very mainstream position that they expect to get little or no support from Republicans.
It was interesting, actually. This happened literally the day that we left. And we didn't get to cover it, but there was that interesting moment. And I think it was Senator Duckworth who was on the floor, like, saying, hey, we need to have this bill. And James Lankford, I believe he's one of the founders of, like, the National Prayer Breakfast, senator from Oklahoma, he's very evangelical Christian. He was like, look, we're not going to be voting on hypotheticals. And it's like, well, hold on, it's not hypothetical. And it's like, this actually is being considered.
It's a live issue now.
It's not law. Yeah, it's an actual law. It puts people in a difficult position. It is weird and fascinating to me that you got more of them to vote for same-sex marriage than they did for contraception. Honestly, same-sex marriage seems far more controversial, so I don't really get it. But anyway, in terms of the votes in the Senate, this one, so according to Dick Durbin, who I think is a number 3 Democrat, who's in the Senate, he said he believes that the contraception bill and the same-sex marriage bill will garner 60 votes needed to overcome filibuster. He could be spinning. I have no idea. But Susan Collins actually is a co-sponsor of the legislation. Lisa Murkowski already come out and said this. Senator Rob Portman was already co-sponsoring the Senate version. Senator Tom Tillis said he probably will vote to enshrine the right for same-sex marriage into federal law. And then Ron Johnson kind of coming out of nowhere and also saying that he would vote for it. Johnson is an interesting one to me and really one to look at because Johnson is kind of like a MAGA libertarian, I guess is the best way to put it. He's very pro-business, but at the end of the day, he's from a swing state. And so
he's up for election in November,
up for re-election, of which he barely won the last time around. People forget this, but the Kochs basically dragged his ass across the line, spent $25 million in the last 2 weeks of the election in order to, I think he was up again against Russ Feingold. Well, anyway, he's in a tough re-election, and so he clearly sees this as politically advantageous. So I found the Johnson crossover to be, frankly, the most interesting one so far. So will there be 5 more? We don't know. However, we do know that this is something currently being espoused by Ted Cruz. Remember, he was a Supreme Court, litigator and all of that, senator from Texas. He came out and said that he believes that the court was clearly wrong in their decision here. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
In Obergefell, the court said, no, we know better than you guys do, and now every state must sanction and permit gay marriage. I think that decision was clearly wrong when it was decided. It was the court overreaching.
So there you go. I mean, and again, most of these guys, the way that they talk about it is exactly in this way, which is, well, the Defense of Marriage Act was the law of the land passed by Congress. So if you want to change it, then Congress has to change it. And they don't really articulate their position on it. But then if push came to shove, they would probably vote against it. So it's like, and
that is the thing, right? Because after Roe was overturned, that was some of the talking point was like, oh, if you want to change it, go and legislate it.
Right.
Now that they're like, okay, we're going to legislate on it, you have all these guys, go ahead and put Marco Rubio up on the screen, who are like, this is a waste of time. Why are we bothering with this? When their message previously was like, oh, if you want to deal with this issue, then we have a process, go through the legislative process. So he says there's a host of other issues that people don't spend all day on Twitter care about. Their entire agenda is really responsive to the donor base and their activist base, not responsive to the vast majority of Americans. Again, 71% of Americans support gay marriage. Those aren't real issues. I've never seen a person come up to me and talk about getting rid of gay marriage. This is what their base is demanding they do. Their radical base represents probably 2% of the country, but a significant majority of the people who give them their money. Again, Rubio saying effectively he's going to vote against this because he thinks it's a waste of time. If you think it's a waste of time, just vote yes and move on. I mean, that's the obvious answer here. So there are some real mental gymnastics going on to try to pretend like this isn't a live issue when you got your buddy Ted Cruz out there like, yeah, this is a live issue and I think we need to go in the other direction.
And Ted is playing the game the same we did in 2016. He's trying to shore up any of the evangelical vote that he possibly could in a primary. And we're going to probably talk tomorrow about Mike Pence also wanting to run. Remember, he wants an outright ban, national ban on abortion. So what I think is interesting is, what does Trump think about all this? The guy's going to run soon. Somebody's going to ask him. Somebody should have. I mean, frankly, if I get the interview, I'll ask him.
Yeah.
I'll be like, hey, what do you think? Should you outlaw it? And I'd love to see what he said. I'd love to see also what he says about gay marriage, because now these are all things on the table, which he avoided like the plague whenever he was there. He would say something like, yeah, and he would call himself pro-life, but as we know from the reporting, like he even thought that the overturn of Roe was going to be bad for Republicans. And as usual, I actually think he's a better politician than most of these people and knows better. So it will be very interesting to me to see how he's going to handle that question.
Because we know where Mike Pence will go.
Of course.
Mike Pence will side with the evangelicals, no doubt.
And he's going to maybe hit Trump over the head with that. Again, I still think Trump would win in primary. I don't think it's matter. But what does that mean for a general election?
Where do you think DeSantis will fall? Because,
well,
I mean,
he's keep his mouth mighty quiet.
Yes, he has.
Yeah.
I mean, because he's really cultivated sort of evangelical, right cultural conservative base as well. So this will, listen, who at this point in America doesn't have friends who are gay? Right? Doesn't have people that they know, love, care about in their family who are gay, who are married. And so just on a personal level, we were thinking about, okay, why did this actually perform a little better in the House than the contraception? I actually think that that is part of it, is because how can you look your friend or loved one or whoever in the eye and explain this vote and this position that is just antithetical to their, the building blocks of their life? So it does really put Republicans in a difficult position, because while I think a majority of Republicans at this point, marriage polling bears that out routinely, most people have accepted and moved on. The base that is most energized about this is very, very opposed. And they have a lot of power in the caucus. That's why they're trying to come up with these rationalizations. Like, I think Rubio is a perfect example here of not saying whether he's for it or against it, just trying to come up with a third way of, it's a waste of time. Come on, these senators and members of Congress, they waste their time all day long, like naming post offices and whatever, and yet this is where you draw the line, when in fact this is a live issue that a lot of people do care about and is really core to their sort of just basic functioning, basic rights.
Yeah, I went and there was a good story 2 weeks ago, right around when we were doing the show, about DeSantis. It says a culture warrior goes quiet. DeSantis dodges questions on abortions. Obviously, he's gone ahead and signed the 15-week ban. The 15-week ban actually is overwhelmingly popular. That's like 70% of people. But he's not going to 6. Or he says he will, but he's not fighting for it. Hasn't opened his mouth. He's been very, very quiet on interviews.
They've been very vague about what they would do.
Like what they're doing. The judge struck it down, frankly, doing him a favor politically. So they're in a situation where the state also Florida's just different. So, even Rubio, like he could have some trouble. Although, Florida is a red state at this point. Rick Scott, I checked, I haven't seen anything that he said on this too. So these guys, remember, they only win elections by 3-4 points. So they still have to worry about how things are going to go their way. And DeSantis himself is running for re-election in the state. So he himself also has to think about that too. So interesting stuff.
And is going to have to answer some questions at some point.
Definitely.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.